Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generally spooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho! Now a quick trailer from our friends at the Shit and Bricks podcast.
Oh, hi there. This is Kate.
And I'm Dominic, and we are your hosts of Shitting Bricks, the podcast.
Every week we'll bring you an episode of what makes people shit bricks. Is it a fear of death? Deep water? Running out of wine? Cannibalism? We take a warped look at these topics using examples from history that are the epitome of some scary shit.
You can find us on all the regular podcast streaming services like Apple, Spotify, and Google. For exclusive content including behind-the-scenes nuggets, links to weekly topics, and maybe even merch in the future, head to Shitting Bricks Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. But for now, drop your dacks, pop a squat, and let's get into it.
Was that for your benefit or anyone listening's benefit?
That's the opener. That's how we open the show.
That's how you opened the show.
How we open the show. A herniated opening.
That's disgusting. God, you're on fire today. Are you acting up because you had to wait? Is that what this is?
No.
You're acting up on purpose because you didn't want to stop recording last time?
No. Obviously. God. You're so stupid.
And we've actually had to wait like almost a week.
I have had to wait a full week. What's this about? I'm supposed to be the insider. I get insider access to the content. And I'm sitting here waiting around for part 2.
Welcome to the Generally Spooky podcast.
Welcome. We're here for part 2 of the Inveraray Castle.
Yes, we have been talking about Clan Campbell and their various exploits, most of them murderous, but that's kind of what makes it fun, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know how I feel about that.
The good stuff, it's tricky, isn't it?
That's Kieran, the impatient one, like pacing around over there.
And then we were about to start recording, and we had to wait for the postie to make her way around the close. I'm like, no, I want to start. That's me. That's Eilidh over there, looking at me with derision.
Oh, you can hear that, huh?
We can hear you shaking your head.
It's really more of an eye roll.
Yes.
I'm an eye roller. Sometimes I can't help it.
Eilidh will be telling us the story today, and I will be listening. But since this is part 2, you presumably know that already.
Well, yeah, this is still going to be a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident. But it might not make much sense if you haven't listened to part 1.
Yep.
Live your life. If you only want to listen to part 2 of parts 1 through 3, I guess I can't stop you.
That's fine. Eilidh only watches the 2 Towers when we watch Lord of the Rings, so...
Okay, that's misleading. Because I watch the full trilogy extended edition any chance I get. I know them backwards and forwards and up and down. My favourite is the 2 Towers. If I only have time for one, I watch the 2 Towers. That was misleading.
That's what I said. It's
it's not.
It's the same. Did you have a look at the merch? We have merch out. Rebel Label. Or, no?
Label Rebel.
Label Rebel.
Good ad.
What did I just say?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
We have new merch. It's inspired by our Colonel Anne McIntosh episode. She was affectionately nicknamed Label Rebel for her exploits during the Battle of Culloden and prior.
Label Rabble, as I like to say.
Yeah, Kieran calls it that frequently. Drives me nuts.
I'm wearing the hat. I have a Label Rebel hat on right now.
Yeah, as we speak.
As you'll be able to hear. Mm-hmm. Obviously.
You can nuzzle the microphone, maybe.
I'm not going to do that.
Yes, it's available on the website now. We have hats, t-shirts and tote bags.
Link in the description.
And they're great.
Yeah. Well chuffed with how they came out.
You can also join in with our bingo game over on Patreon or over on the website. If you join in on Patreon, you could win a prize.
I love prizes. I'm not allowed to enter, though.
No. So that's really the place to be.
Did you ever read the back of cereal boxes when there was competitions? And it was always like a little asterisk saying, like, if you're at all related to anybody who works at the company, you're not allowed to enter.
There's a reason that they did that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, this is not related to our podcast at all.
Should we save this for the blether?
Yes.
Yes.
I was fired up. I was ready to get into it. Just to entice you into our We Blether series on Patreon, I'm going to get into the McDonald's Monopoly scandal.
Okay.
The Monopoly game scandal.
Oh, I know that game.
But yeah, here's not the time.
This is part 2 of 3 where we got enough going over here.
We've got places to be.
But my point being, that's what I have for entering the bingo card. Mm-hmm. I'm not allowed to enter. I'm not allowed to enter. And there's another delivery man outside ready to interrupt us. So let's roll some music and we'll get to it when he leaves. So, we left off with some young gentlemen in charge of a very large army, even, going to war.
That's funny that you say that, because I was going to open by asking you just for fun to remind us where we were, Kieran. Because I didn't think you'd be able to do it, quite honestly.
I remember it was that, and the young guy was 17. Is that him? Or he was 21. And you have to give... Yes? No?
I'm just letting you speak.
Oh, okay.
I think it's called letting someone dig their own grave. I believe that's the expression.
And I can't remember who he was, but I'm assuming he was either Colin or Archibald Campbell. Because that's who everyone else has been. I'm just playing the odds on that point. And he was going north to fight some Catholics, maybe? But he had a bunch of Catholics in his army. And everyone was like, don't attack yet. And he was like, well, if they attack, I'm not going to not attack back. Which is a really weird way to say that. This is why you lead the episodes typically. And yeah, over to you.
Well, that's the episode, you guys. We'll see you next week. That was very good. You have the basic details there. I'm proud of you.
Normally the basic details of what I don't have. It's pretty good.
Archibald the Grim was the 7th Earl of Argyll.
The Grim, that's it.
I was referring to him just as Grim because he's another Archibald, so we need to distinguish them somehow.
Yeah.
He was sent by King James to fight against the Catholic earls in the north.
It was Catholics. Haha.
He was only 19 at this time. He did not have experience in battle, even though he had superior numbers in terms of men. And that was kind of where we left him. He was getting ready to engage with the Catholic army. Mm-hmm. And we had doubts.
We had doubts. I don't see it going well.
Well, yeah, Grim's on a very special mission because King James VI has given him a commission of fire and sword. He's granted him this commission to basically raise hell against these earls who are going against the king.
I remember.
But if you'll remember, even though Grim seems to have the advantage, there were lots of things playing against him. One of them being that the northern Catholic earls were older, they had more experience, and their men were more loyal. I mentioned last time that a lot of the men who were forced to serve Grim, there's 12,000 men, a lot of them were Catholic.
Oh, that's not good.
And had been pressed into combat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have a lot to be nervous about. Grim had just attacked Ruthven Castle on his way north.
Yes.
And the Catholic force have just agreed that they are going to conquer or die. And the very last thing that I told you was that Grim had been advised to wait for reinforcements. King James was supposedly coming to join this battle himself. That's how seriously he was taking it. And men from Clan Mackenzie and Clan Fraser were also supposed to be joining Grim in this battle of epic proportions. But Grimm had decided that he would wait for the enemy to attack him.
Yes.
If he was attacked first, he would engage. He wouldn't retreat.
It's such a, he's trying to have a get out of jail free card. Oh, well, I didn't attack them. Technically, I haven't done anything wrong. Yes, you have. And it's all going to go tits up.
But he's a young man. He's trying to prove himself.
Yeah.
You can see how there's a reason that that's the age bracket that most men die in car accidents.
That's true, eh?
At 19, your brain isn't fully formed. And
Yep.
I'm assuming in his position, you're just pumped full of testosterone.
Yeah. And 19, I was close. Average of 17 and 21, you get 19.
I did notice that. I was hoping you would also notice that. I hope that's a good enough roundup for where we left things.
I think so.
But now we can move into new story.
Yes. So, battle is about to commence, assumedly.
Yes. The two forces eventually met at Glenlivet, which is north of the Cairngorms near Granton-on-Spey. So not too far from here. I couldn't work out from the information available exactly where the battlefield was, but it has been officially mapped out and it is a protected site.
Oh, really?
Research is being done on the site. They're excavating or getting ready to excavate. So it has been mapped, but I did not have the expertise to figure out from the map whereabouts this is on the edge of the Cairngorms in the middle of nowhere.
I see, yep.
I tried, I couldn't do it, and I didn't think it was that crucial.
No, not if there's no, visitor centre.
No, there's
anything.
nothing. They've just been able to map out most likely where the battle took place.
Cool.
So the two forces have met each other. Grimm is trying to rally his men to his cause, pointing out, now that they can see them, how much smaller the Catholic force is and how vastly they outnumber them.
Yep.
Grimm had stopped with his men at the top of a big hill, and he had ordered them to dig in pits below the hill to hamper any enemy that was going to try and charge them.
Very smart, yep.
Right? But through intercepted information, the Catholic earls learned that reinforcements were coming to bolster Grimm and his men. So, naturally, they've got the advantage, so they decide to attack before the reinforcements could get there. Because they're already outnumbered.
Yep.
You're not going to wait till you're even more outnumbered.
And it seems there's no end of possible spies. If if a lot of Grimm's force are Catholic, it's not a big surprise information got leaked.
The metaphor of building your house on the sand comes to mind. That, he has all these grand ideas and all this big grand vision, but he's built it on a really shaky foundation, and that never goes well.
Never goes well. Except when you're the guy in Monty Python who built it in a swamp.
Very true.
And it sank, so he built it again on the ruins of that. And well, it sank as well, but you know the rest. If you know, you know.
The Earl of Huntly's men began to advance on Grimm. They made their way up that hill that they had stationed themselves at the top of and began what would be called the Battle of Glenlivet. Now, it turns out that Huntly didn't really have to be too worried about how the battle was going to fare for him, because one of Grimm's allies, who was Campbell of Loughnell, one of his own family, had agreed to join Huntly's side once the battle had actually begun.
Oh, that's a betrayal.
This had been pre-arranged and pre-agreed.
That's not good.
So on top of all the problems he already has, now this has thrown a wrench in the works.
Yep. Now Cuz is thrown down.
Yeah. This Campbell had a lot to gain by turning on Grimm. Grimm had murdered his brother.
Well.
And Campbell was next in line to inherit the earldom if Grimm died.
Ooh.
So you've made an enemy out of your, successor.
Yes.
That's not a good thing.
No. And what did he think would happen? Oh, I know I murdered your brother and everything, but can we
He had it coming.
Can we fight together? You want to come and be on my side? Oh, well, of course.
Probably wasn't even that. It's you have to because I said so.
Well, that's true.
Which again isn't very endearing.
No.
So I wrote in my notes, can you imagine the shock and the betrayal? But also, can you imagine murdering someone's brother?
I can't really imagine either of those things, to be honest.
It's almost like tit for tat.
Yeah.
You did this, so I'm doing this, and you can't be mad about it. So there.
Well, I was initially like, what? Like, to his own family? But then it's, oh, he murdered his brother. Like, what? To his own family?
Yeah. I think this branch of the Campbells had separated from the 3rd Earl of Argyll.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think the 3rd Earl had multiple sons. Mm-hmm. So there's Grimm's line, which is the line that inherited, but these Campbells came from a different son.
Got you.
I think that's where it happened.
Yeah.
Grimm was the 7th.
Oh, okay. So they're pretty distantly related.
Yes.
In terms of blood.
Yes, but he would still have had somewhat of a position of standing.
And we talked about earlier on how, like, clan comes before family.
Yeah. So this was a big problem.
Yeah. Oh, how many men did he have, do we know?
I'm not too sure. On top of all that, though, one of Grimm's battle commanders, Grant of Gartenbeg, fled as soon as the battle started.
As soon as?
Because he was also on Huntley's side.
Oh.
So he just straight up left, and all his men went with him.
Oh. Do you think as they were like, charge, he was just running on the spot? No. Waited till everyone, oh yeah, let's go.
Oh, my ankle. Oh.
Yeah, I'll catch up in a minute. Okay, let's go, boys. We're going home.
Psst, we're just gonna go. So yeah, it's not going well for Grimm.
No, that's a grim start.
Hey.
Oh yeah.
So it's probably no surprise to you that even though Grimm had superior numbers, he was defeated that day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you see it coming?
I did see it coming. I saw it coming last week. I'm just so smart.
But in what I think is poetic justice, Campbell of Loughnell was killed by a cannonball.
A cannonball? Mm-hmm. Oh, and he was the betrayer. Mm-hmm. Oof.
So all of his men fled when they saw that their leader had died.
Yeah.
So he never benefited from betraying Grimm.
Well, that's good, I guess.
It's a kind of poetic justice, I think.
Yes.
500 of Grimm's men were killed that day, compared to 14 on the Catholic side.
14?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, you'd be embarrassed if you could be a ghost after the fact. Like, oh man, like how many of us were killed? 14, like, just over a dozen.
Yeah, you stepped in a bog.
Well, you have to wonder. Yeah, because you could just trip at the start and be trampled. Oh, that's embarrassing. Oh.
It was surprising to me, though, that the numbers were so low, given that one side had 12,000 men.
Well, yes.
Given that there were only 500 dead, even though that's a huge number, compared to the total, better than I would have expected.
We've had much bloodier battles in previous episodes.
Yes. Fun fact about the Battle of Glenlivet. Mm-hmm. It was the last time that someone played the Highland harp on the battlefield.
I didn't even know there was a Highland harp.
Yep. It's a thing. It was the last time it was played in battle because after this, the pipes became the instrument of choice for war.
Oh. I feel bagpipes are more imposing than a harp.
I mean, the sound will carry way further.
Yeah.
Like we were recently at a wedding and the piper knew what was up because he was, playing the pipes as the bride and groom were being cuddled by everyone and getting all the well wishes. But he stood like 200 yards away.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
He came out and went, right, I'm going to play for everyone, but I'm going to stand way over there so you can still chat while I play. I'm like, good guy. Yeah, nice one. Yeah. Nice one.
So I can see why pipes would be the preferred option.
Yeah. Even more portable, I think, to carry pipes than because harps are pretty big, I think. I suppose it could be a smaller one.
No, the Highland harp is a big harp.
Yeah, because people, when they're in a case, they normally have wheels on it. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's a big old thing to lug around.
Yeah, it used to be played before battle.
I didn't know that. When was this battle?
1594.
Are you telling me, or
1594?
Listen to the assertion.
To be fair, the date is in last week's script.
Yeah.
So I didn't have it to hand.
Yeah.
Yes, 1594.
Well, There you go. That is a fun fact. That's brand new information to me.
Thought you'd like that one. Now, even though they won the day, the Catholic earls kind of realised that things... Like, they won the battle, but they weren't going to win the war.
Well, the king's still on his way.
Yes, and they realised that help wasn't coming from Spain like they had hoped. That was why James was so upset. They had gotten in touch with the King of Spain and were trying to go round him.
Yep.
They had committed treason. They realised Spain weren't going to send men, so they weren't going to have that support. And they couldn't hold off King James forever, like you said. He's still pissed and he's still on his way.
Yeah. There's an awful lot of waiting for France and Spain to come and help, and then being like, nah.
Well, I think that's why things have always been kind of tough between like Scotland, England, France and Spain. I know that's not all inclusive. Like, Britain's pissed off pretty much everybody by just generally being a dick. But,
yeah,
you know, like, because England has had bad relations with both France and Spain, and it's a bigger power and is in between Scotland and these countries, there's always been issues.
Yeah, it's just...
with support.
Makes things a bit tense, doesn't it? Not clear cut.
So the day after the Battle of Glenlivet, the Catholic earls went to Elgin Cathedral.
Oh, again.
And they held a last public celebration of Mass.
Oh. Well, that's nice.
Catholics, remember.
Yes.
King James marched north, like he said he would, and he met no opposition, even from people who had previously announced that they were rebels. He marched straight on through. And this kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, but the earls, the Catholic ones, abandoned their men.
That's not nice.
They fled. And luckily, an amnesty was held, and the followers of the earls were forgiven.
Oh, well, that's good, at least.
But that's luck.
Yeah.
They just abandoned their followers.
Because it's not I'll give myself up if you don't hurt them. It's
very much the opposite.
I'm getting the hell out of here. Hopefully they'll be okay.
You take the fall, you keep them off as long as you can, we're going to go.
Yeah.
But despite everything, the Earls of Huntly, Errol and Angus had everything restored to them in 1597.
Damn.
Just 3 years later.
3 years later.
And the Earl of Huntly was upgraded to Marquess of Huntly.
Ooh.
So it doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make any sense. Any sense at all.
Swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
So none of it mattered.
None of it mattered. And presumably Grim has kind of gone off with his tail between his legs.
Well, he had a bit of a hard time moving forward. He survived the battle. Yeah, thankfully, he's only 19. No, you wouldn't want that for anybody.
No.
He was fighting on the Protestant side of history against the Catholics. But in 1619, when he was 44, he announced that he was now a Catholic.
Oh. That's an odd one.
After all of that.
Yeah.
And I read a big part of why he did this was that his wife, Agnes Douglas, was a Roman Catholic. And he converted after her death.
Huh.
She had died giving birth to their son.
Oh.
And apparently she came from illegitimate royal lineage. Her parents were tight with Mary, Queen of Scots. Her mother was one of Mary's closest friends, and her father was one of the people that helped spring Mary from Lochleven Castle when she was being held prisoner there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
She was Roman Catholic.
She's a Roman Catholic.
So when Grim announced that he was now a Catholic, he had to give up his land and his property to his son. And Grim went off and started living in the Netherlands when he announced his conversion, because it wasn't safe for him to announce publicly that he was now a Catholic.
It's good it went to his son rather than just like being taken away from the family completely.
Well, I think because he gave it up,
it
was different. He wasn't trying to keep it and be Catholic. He was putting his faith first. His second wife, Anne Cornwallis, was an Englishwoman, and she was also a Roman Catholic, which seems to have been a factor. So Grim's son inherited, who was also called Archibald, even though he wasn't Grim's eldest child, but his eldest child didn't have a penis, so obviously she couldn't take on that responsibility.
Well. But of course.
And by 1621, Grim was allowed back on British soil and lived in London with his wife.
I suppose he's no threat at that point.
That's exactly it. His title was the only thing that he had. So
Yeah.
he was still the Earl, but he had nothing else.
Yeah.
His son had everything. So he couldn't really do much.
No, he just exists. And if he's down in London, he's not causing problems up in Scotland.
Yeah. Grim's son, Archibald, the 8th Earl of Argyll, was the complete opposite of his father, as usually happens, in that he was a fierce Presbyterian.
Oh.
And this is what he's known for, predominantly, because it brought him directly to blows with King Charles I.
Okay. And I guess Presbyterian is a branch of Protestantism?
Yeah, that's all you need to know for this.
Yeah.
That he's a Protestant and his dad, Wisney.
Yeah. Young Grim.
Yeah, I refer to him as Archibald the 8th moving forward. Now, he was a major leader of the Covenanter movement.
Oh.
Which we've talked about before. I still struggle to understand and keep track of it sometimes, but he was on the Covenanter side. And he refused to follow the king's will because he was a committed Presbyterian. And he told King Charles this to his face when Archibald was summoned to London in 1638.
Ballsy.
Which was also the year that Grim died.
Oh.
So he officially became the Earl.
Okay. And King Charles is the son of King James VI?
Yes.
Got you.
Yes. But King Charles I is the one who's trying to put king before God. And the Covenanters don't like that.
Yes. Oh, and he's the King of England and Scotland.
Yes, but so was King James VI.
Yeah, because he was King James VI and first.
Yes.
Ah, see? I'm getting the hang of this. 2 years. It was 2 years, 2 days ago that we started the podcast. Or 2 years yesterday. And I'm just finally, it's starting to click, you know?
Proud of you.
Thank you.
So Archibald VIII has told King Charles to his face that he does not respect him and won't do what he wants. So in revenge, Charles commanded the Earl of Antrim, who was from Northern Ireland, to invade Campbell land and basically just raise hell.
Wow. That's a first.
Go over there and just fuck shit up.
Was it even like on the fly? Like, don't tell them it was me.
Well, yes, they were sneaky about it because Antrim was told to get the MacDonalds all riled up so they would do the work of attacking the Campbells so Charles wouldn't have to do it directly. Because remember, the MacDonalds and the Campbells have had issues for a long time.
Interesting.
Because they're kind of neighbours on the west. So that was how they did it.
Oh, that's not good.
Sneaky.
Sneaky.
Charles also tried to strip Archibald's power through Parliament, but it didn't really work because Parliament wasn't with Charles, as far as I know.
Yep.
He just tried to do that and they said no.
Why? Because he insulted me. We don't care.
We already don't like you. We're not doing that. But you're going to be excited about this next thing.
Ooh.
Archibald was granted a commission of fire and sword.
Another? Oh my god.
Another one.
Against the Irish clan?
No, he was given license to punish and kill two of the royalist leaders, the Earl of Atholl and the Earl of Angus.
Interesting. Wait, if they're royalist, aren't they pro?
Yes, he wasn't given this commission by the king.
Oh. Who gave him the commission then?
I think it was the ones in Scotland, like the ones who were in power trying to go against Charles.
Ah, I see.
As part of the Covenanter movement. I believe that's where the commission came from. But it's tricky to tell, like I said.
Ah, that makes sense. Because it just depends who wins as to whether or not you have permission to do this.
Exactly. Now, I can find surprisingly little about this, which annoys me.
That is annoying.
Because Commission of Fire and Sword is always cool.
It's the most badass thing ever.
Right? Part of the problem was that the Earl of Atholl title was, quote-unquote, created over and over again. So lots of people have been able to call themselves the first Earl of Atholl.
Oh.
It happened about 10 times.
10 times?
Yes.
You'd think it'd be kind of meaningless after, like, the fourth.
Yes, because they'd strip the title and then they would recreate it to grant it to someone else.
Yeah.
So there's so many first Earls of Atholl.
Oh. That's confusing.
Right? And we're fighting between Earls again, too. It's just history repeating itself over and over and over again.
Yeah. It just comes round and round and round.
And everyone's switching sides. So we support the king. Now we don't. Now we do. Not this king. Maybe the next one.
Everyone just needs to mind their business.
It's very difficult to keep track of. I do my best, but it's hard.
Well, how are you supposed to sift through the Earl of Athol the First, the third. So he's the third Earl of Athol the First.
Mm-hmm. It's tricky.
It's tricky.
And records are never completely complete.
No. I'm confused already. If that can happen, do you think we should just make up a title and then call ourselves the first somebody?
You don't want to give yourself a nickname.
Ah, that's true.
That's lame.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I will anyway.
Then you'd be lame.
Well, I'm lame anyway, Ailey.
I don't think you're lame. But I would think you were lame if you gave yourself a nickname.
Okay, I'm going to come up with a nickname.
Okay.
Leather.
Maybe we could workshop it in the blether.
Yes.
We can come up with Kieran's nickname.
Title.
Nickname.
Title.
This was the point when James Graham, who was the first Marquess of Montrose, started taking things personally. Because he was one of the leaders in the royalist camp. Mm-hmm. And he didn't like the problems that Archibald VIII was causing them. So by this point, the royalists and the Covenanters are going at it.
Yes.
They're warring with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Montrose was one of the big leaders of the royalist movement. He came up with a plan to try and make things better for the royalist cause. And this is in 1640, 1641.
Mm-hmm.
Montrose's plan was that when Charles visited Scotland, the king, who he's in support of, Montrose was going to arrange for Archibald VIII to be ambushed and then charged with high treason.
Okay.
That way he would be punished for committing high treason and would then be out of the way for what Montrose wanted to do.
Seems a solid plan.
I mean, it's not great.
Yeah, but what treason did he do?
He didn't really do it.
Oh, he was just...
They're just going to accuse him of high treason so that they can weak him out of the way.
Yeah. If you don't have a good reason, look for a good treason. That's what they say.
I have heard people say that.
It's a very common saying.
I'm assuming the charges were based on the fact that he was a Covenanter and...
That's just inherently treasonous. And he was
going against what Charles wanted.
Royalist stuff. Yeah, fair.
Even though Charles started it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all silly. But the problem with Montrose's plan, or what do you think? There's a big problem with Montrose's plan. Something went very, very wrong. What do you think it was?
What was... I think I've already forgot. What was the plan?
Charles was going to visit Scotland.
Yep.
And during this visit, Montrose decided that we're going to get Archibald, we're going to ambush him, we're going to charge him with treason, and then he's going to be punished, hopefully executed, and then be out of their way.
Well, they don't know where they're going to ambush him. Like, he has to be going somewhere to be ambushed, doesn't he? So...
Well, unfortunately, no, that wasn't the biggest problem with his plan.
Oh.
They didn't even get that far. Because someone blabbed.
Oh.
To ambush someone, you have to surprise them. But word got out about the whole thing. So far that Archibald found out about the entire plan ahead of time.
Years.
And it completely backfired, because then it came out that Montrose had been plotting, had been creating all of these untrue charges and had this plan ahead of time to have him accused and arrested. So he and all his accomplices were put in prison.
Oh, he didn't nail it.
No.
He didn't nail it, it has to be said.
So Charles came to visit as planned, but when he arrived, all his major supporters were in jail.
Oh, no.
Having been plotting on his behalf. So he didn't come off well in this visit.
Oh. Well.
Isn't that awkward?
That's not how you curry favour.
Well, he decided to curry favour by making Archibald VIII the first Marquess of Argyll.
Oh.
Which I believe is one title above Earl, but below a prince or princess.
Okay.
So Charles had to promote him effectively.
Wow, to keep him on side.
In answer to discovering there was this whole plot against him.
Yeah. Being a king sounds like an awful lot of just having your head in your hands and just like rubbing your temples, just being like, these idiots. How do I undo this?
I get the feeling that's also what it's like being a parent.
Yeah, I think we're going to say a podcast host.
No.
Why?
Well, it got even worse for Charles because he, after this, had to surrender his powers to Parliament.
Oh, no.
So he lost big time. Montrose made things so much worse.
Oh,
But Archibald VIII did pretty well.
he did do pretty well, considering he didn't need to do very much.
No, not really. He was the victim of this plot.
Yep. Presumably, he just told whoever arrested him, like, they're going to try and have me murdered. Can we do something about this? And they went,
It didn't get as far as him being ambushed and arrested, because the plot came out.
Exactly. So he just heard about this plot and then
I thought
alerted.
you said you were talking to the people who were arresting him. So it didn't get that far.
No, just that he heard about this, so he reported it, and then they got arrested, presumably.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and then he gets a promotion, so to speak.
So he has more power.
It's alright. It's alright. So I think you said Earl is below Duke.
Yes.
So do you think it's Earl Marquis Duke?
Marquess.
Marquess.
Marquis is where you have a party.
Is it Marquis?
No, it's Marqueess.
ESS, okay.
So, in 1641, another plot was created by Montrose, who got out of prison, against all the Scottish nobles who were on the side of Parliament, which included Archibald.
Okay.
So Parliament and the Covenanters are on the same team because they don't like Charles and what he's standing for.
Yes.
So they've banded together, and Charles has had to surrender his powers to Parliament.
Yes.
I hope this is making sense.
It is, but Montrose is still on the side of the king.
He is, absolutely. So he's come up with another plot,
Well, it couldn't go wrong twice.
because he just can't quit.
Yep.
It's been ominously named after the fact, The Incident.
Oh no. I was going to say I didn't think you could get addicted to plot.
No, I think it's more chill.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you a bit calm, doesn't it? It's not inherently addictive.
You can tell that we've used a lot of plot.
We are well acquainted.
Plot heads. Anyway, The Incident.
The Incident.
That was supposed to be the big reveal. It's ominous. It's The Incident.
The Incident.
Montrose came up with a fiendish plan, which is hopefully more fiendish than the first one.
I do love a fiendish plan.
He decided that it would be smart to have Archibald, along with the Marquess of Hamilton and the Earl of Lanark, kidnapped.
Is the Mr. Montrose, is he also known as Dick Dastardly by any chance?
I don't blame you for thinking that. It gives Scooby-Doo villain.
Yes. Or, you
It's
know,
giving... like,
Wile E. Coyote.
yeah, Looney Tunes, what's his name? Yosemite Sam?
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
he decided he was going to have them kidnapped, and that would solve all his problems.
He's going to catch a wascally wabbit.
Yes. Oh, that was Elmer Fudd.
That's
that
Elmer
wasn't.
Fudd, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the vibes that I got too, so I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Yes.
His plan was to have them kidnapped, which would be easy, even though he couldn't do it the first time. And then he would have them shipped off on a ship that would leave Leith near Edinburgh. And he would just have them forcibly removed from the country.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he sent them off on a ship, there's no way they could get on another ship and come back, so it's foolproof.
I mean, depends who they're with. I suppose it would be easier to cover up murdering them in a different country.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, he was just going to have them removed.
Yeah, we're going to kidnap them and we're going to ship them. Done. 2-part plan. It's simpler. Last time it was 3 parts. Streamline.
We've refined the system. It couldn't possibly go wrong. Except exactly the same thing happened this time.
He needs to keep his mouth shut.
Yep, the plot was outed again. A soldier who was involved in the scheme, so they'd gotten so far that they had people enlisted. This was going to happen. The soldier told the leader of the Covenanter army what was going to happen.
Ugh.
And the 3 men were warned in enough time that they were able to get away. But this was a much closer call, it seems.
Yeah, well, he's getting closer. So if he has a third chance at a scheme...
But should he get a third chance at a scheme? He's
mean,
doing very poorly.
I don't think he should have gotten a second chance, really. But, you know, if there's a pattern emerging, so by the third time, maybe he'll have some luck. Except
Maybe he'll just like push him off a big rock or something. Something easier.
So we're going to go up behind him and we're going to stab him.
I'm going to bonk him on the head. When it all came out that this plot had been made and very nearly carried out, people were pissed.
That's fair enough.
And once again, Charles was linked to all of it and came off as meddling in Scottish affairs.
Oh, I think he's going to have Montrose executed.
Will you stop?
Stop trying to help.
Charles looked so bad that he had to come out publicly and say that he never had any idea about any of it. It was all news to him, but because he had committed and said all of that in public to try and save himself, he then had to be completely unbothered about allowing an investigation into the plot to uncover the truth.
Well,
because he wasn't involved, remember?
Yep.
So he couldn't be concerned about an investigation into something he didn't have a part in. It's giving Trump.
I know, I was getting Boris Johnson, actually.
But no, I never had those documents, but don't check. Don't check.
You have to trust me, don't check.
Don't look behind the curtain. What do you think? What's the flavour on this one?
Yeah, how's this?
How's it tasting?
How does it smell? It smells like bullshit. I think Montrose is going to die.
Okay.
At the very least. And I think it's going to get linked to Charles. Even if Charles actually didn't have anything to do with it, he's going to find some letter that Montrose wrote to be like, Charles, this is happening. Dog, let's get him.
That was the vernacular of the time.
I think so. That's like that Middle English people talk about. That's what it was.
Well, it actually went far worse for Charles than that.
Oh, no.
As a result of this, Charles basically lost all his remaining power in Scotland.
Ooh.
In a nutshell, he assented to the abolition of the episcopacy in Scotland in favour of the Covenanters' wishes. And he had to put Covenanters on the Privy Council.
Oh, okay.
So Charles has been completely beaten and he now has no authority and no power in Scotland.
Ooh.
And the Covenanters now do.
Oh, okay, because I was going to ask, after this epopsicle...
Episcopacy.
Epopsicle. who is in charge?
Well, the Privy Council.
Gotcha.
They're running Scotland. Because Charles had to go down south and deal with the civil war that was brewing in England, which was also his fault.
Oh, no. So James becomes the first king of Britain and then has a son, and he just fucks it immediately.
Because he gets too greedy.
So the Privy Council in charge of Scotland, is that in Scotland or is that in London?
No, the Privy Council, I'm fairly certain, were either Stirling or Edinburgh.
Yeah, I thought so.
I feel like by this point it may have been Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But they're based in Scotland.
Yes, it's that Privy Council, because we talked a lot about the Toilet Council in the Witch episodes.
Yes.
Mini-series, I think.
Yeah, so it was an institution that had been around for a long time. Usually they served under the king, but the king has been stripped of everything. So they are ruling in his stead.
Got you.
Basically. Now, Archibald had to fight against the Royalists in the Scottish Civil War, which happened a couple of years later, in 1644.
Who did, sorry?
Archibald.
Okay.
The 8th.
The 8th still.
Well, yeah, he's the Marquess of Argyll, but I'm going to keep calling him Archibald the 8th to be consistent.
I appreciate that. I just feel like so much happened there that we should be another Archibald down.
No, this is all the same guy.
All the same guy. And he hasn't...
I'm too excited.
I'm dead. He hasn't really done anything. He's just had things done to him in this whole escapade, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's leading the Covenanter cause. He's one of the leaders, so he has been doing a lot.
Yes, sorry. In our stories, he hasn't been...
He's not the aggressor so much.
Yeah.
But he fought in the Civil War, mainly to protect his own land.
That's a good reason.
Because if warring is happening, you have to try and protect your interests.
Yeah.
And he had a lot to be invested in because he had received more land after being made a Marquess.
He must have, like, the whole southwest of Scotland at this point.
It's insane. The amount of land that the Campbells had at this time is mental.
Yeah, like...
It's a surprising chunk of the entire country.
Because throughout the last episode, they just kept getting more and more land.
Mm-hmm. I can't underestimate it. It's insane.
Massive.
Now, he tried to leave the army either that same year or the year after. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to protect his own interests. He wasn't interested in fighting the long fight. But this was when he started living at Inveraray Castle.
Oh.
Remember that thing that the whole episode is supposed to pivot around?
I remember.
Inveraray Castle. He started living there.
Inveraray.
But do you really think that his almost comically terrible arch nemesis, Montrose, will let things lie at this point.
Oh yes, I forgot he wasn't. There was no conclusion to him. We just heard how it all went tits up for Charlie Boy.
I led you on a little bit there.
You did. A sleight of hand happening right in front of my eyes.
Absolutely fucking not.
No.
He would not let things lie. Montrose basically hunted Archibald down to Inveraray, stalked him across the country, and Archibald had to go on the run.
Damn.
He couldn't live at home. And while chasing down Archibald, Montrose destroyed everything that he and his forces came across, like scorched earth, raising hell, killing whatever, whoever, everything they met, they killed.
Wow, it sounds like he's almost like gone mad.
Well, it's like a vendetta run.
Yeah.
No, what is it? A vendetta ride. You know, Cowboys, Wild West.
I don't actually know.
Well, not important. But yeah, it's just a serious vendetta, a grudge.
Yeah. Just that's obviously he's fixed in like, no, you're all my problems. You're the reason all this terrible stuff has happened. Even though it was his own actions. And it was his own incompetency.
Well, just difference in beliefs, but he can't accept it.
Yeah, so he's just ride or die to take him down.
And now they're at war, so he can do things he probably couldn't have done before.
That's true. That's why he's Montrose, not Mont rolled over.
Montrose from the ashes of his own failure.
From the ashes of his house that he burnt down.
From the ashes of King Charles's house that he burnt down.
Shit. This is Archibald's fault, it's not me.
He did it.
He made me do it.
In February 1645, Montrose carried out a slaughter of Archibald's men while Archibald watched.
God.
Archibald himself had already been injured in this battle, but he was safe on a boat on Loch Lynn.
Oh.
He had been taken there to keep him safe. And I read that he had fallen off his horse.
Ooh, sore.
So he's already been injured. But from this boat on Loch Lynn, he watched 1,500 of his men be killed by royalist forces.
Oh my God. Oh. Oh, that's horrible. Oh no.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's not nice.
So that's how personally Montrose was taking this, it feels like.
Yeah. He's mad. It's funny, well, none of it's funny, but it's funny to me that he can escape just by getting into a boat. Because if you don't have a boat...
Well, it's a very simple barrier to entry, isn't it?
You can't get him. You can wait till he comes back in, but he could just row somewhere else. So simple, so effective for him alone.
So yeah, pretty terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't get much worse.
Well, it's kind of a running thing with the story of the Campbells because it's very back and forth. Mm-hmm. Because this happened in 1645, but the following year, something called the Dunoon Massacre happened.
Oh, no.
And in this case, the Campbells were the ones doing all the killing.
Oh.
So it's tricky. No one is completely innocent or to blame.
No.
It seems when you're dealing with this branch of the Campbells particularly.
Sounds like everyone's to blame.
Yeah, it's just a lot of killing.
Yeah. A
Now-
lot of massacring as well.
Yeah, just really brutal. But you tell me if this sounds at all familiar. I'm going to tell you the story of the Dunoon Massacre.
Okay.
1646, the Campbells had been at odds with their neighbours, the Lamonts, so that's Lamonts, for some time. Mm-hmm. They had been attacking each other for quite a while, and with the Civil War happening, like I said, the Lamonts took advantage of this atmosphere and basically taking advantage of what other people are doing to try and slip in under the radar to do what they want that has nothing to do with the Civil War.
Yes.
But I can't think of a more concise way to say that right now.
No.
The Lamonts decided that they were going to attack the Campbells. And in their minds, this was completely fair because the Campbells had been taking liberties and stealing Lamont land. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to fight back. In June 1646, a force of Campbells appeared at Castle Toward, which is a Lamont castle. And this is following the Lamonts attacking Campbells during the Civil War. The Campbells appeared at the castle and they asked for hospitality.
Okay.
And we've talked about hospitality before, but if you haven't heard it, it's a custom that if someone turns up at your door and asks for food and shelter, if they're needy in that way, you give it to them. Mm-hmm. You don't turn them away. You share what you've got, and you kind of share the best of what you have, as with them being your guests.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just a Scottish thing, but that's hospitality. So that's what the Lammonts did, even though they had been effectively warring with the Campbells. They let them in, they fed them, they watered them, gave them shelter. And I'm sure they regretted it very much when the Campbells killed them all while they slept, and then threw their bodies down a well nearby, so that the water for the surrounding area was completely undrinkable.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, that's a bit much. And it sounds very Game of Thrones. Is that why it sounds familiar?
No. James Lamont, who I'm assuming was the chief, surrendered, obviously. Mm-hmm. And the Campbells said that if he surrendered, his people wouldn't come to more harm. So he agreed to this because he had already seen complete slaughter of people within his own home. But then the Campbells went back on that completely. They took the Lammonts captive. They set Toward Castle and other Lamont castles ablaze and burned them to the ground.
Oh, no.
And then they took over 200 Lammonts, including women and children, to Dunoon, where they slaughtered them all.
Oh. Whoa. I wasn't ready.
I read that 36 men were killed by hanging, while the rest were stabbed to death or buried alive.
Ugh.
And then James Lamont was held in a dungeon for 5 years, just because.
Just for salt in the wound.
Yeah.
Well, that's all horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely atrocious, terrible. Doesn't sound familiar, though.
Well, I want to draw your attention to how the Campbells set up the attack.
Uh-huh.
What they did prior to the massacre to get access into Toward Castle. The Campbells appeared at the Lammonts' door, their historical enemies, so to speak, and asked for shelter, and stayed with them in their home, and then killed them.
Similar to Glencoe?
Yes. The circumstances were different because the Campbells there had been ordered to do what they did. But the circumstances are surprisingly similar.
They are. Oh, no.
Or the methods are surprisingly similar.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's certainly horrible, horrible similarities.
Yes. So you go from Archibald having to watch 1,500 of his men be slaughtered. Mm-hmm. But then this is happening the year after.
Oh, yeah, so presumably Archibald...
I don't think he was there.
But presumably it was his idea?
Oh, I mean, it's that thing again. He's in charge.
Yeah, that's true. Even if it was...
It still kind of comes down to him because he's chief.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky. There's no clear person that you feel sympathy for. I feel like, because you have this constant back and forth and flipping and flopping.
Yeah.
Because it's all awful.
It's all terrible. Woo. So presumably there is there any repercussions for the Campbells?
Not from what I saw.
Oh, because this is masked in civil war.
Yes. So it's in a wider culture of war and conflict. Mm-hmm. So if they're on opposite sides of this, I don't really see there being any real repercussions.
Yeah. And to a point, if they killed all the witnesses, they can say whatever they want happened. Mm-hmm. Although if you have...
There is evidence of what really happened.
Yeah, the records of what actually happened, including how people were murdered. But still, grim.
It's a very brutal chapter of history that I feel like just kind of gets swept under the rug, under the umbrella of civil war. Yeah. And it's interesting because I noted last time you said civil wars are particularly bloody and brutal. Mm-hmm. This is one of those occasions.
Yep.
Where it's very personal.
Very personal. That extra layer of hatred. Ugh. Well, do you have something nicer to move on to?
I have the rest of the story.
We could move on to the rest of the story.
So after all of this, and even after what Archibald had watched happen on Loch Lynn, Montrose just kept dunking on Archibald over and over again.
This
is still happening.
I keep forgetting about Montrose. Mm-hmm. So he slaughtered all of Archibald's men.
And then he kept winning and winning and winning against Archibald's forces.
Yeah.
Eventually, he chased Archibald out of Scotland. He had
Wow.
to flee to Newcastle in England.
Whoa. What else could he do? Sounds like Montrose is like the Terminator.
He just had to run. And Montrose was eventually defeated at the Battle of Philip Hough near Selkirk, which was down near the border. And not by Archibald, because he had already fled. Montrose was defeated by another Covenanter man. And after this defeat at this battle, Montrose wasn't able to raise another army to keep going. Especially because by this point, King Charles told him it was over and he had to stop fighting.
Mate, leave it.
I think if he could have, Montrose would have kept going.
I think so. It sounds like he would have fought to the bitter end.
But I think Archibald had a better view of the bigger picture, because Archibald was there when King Charles had to negotiate surrender with
Yeah.
Parliament, which is a very big deal. So it seems like Montrose is kind of caught in the smaller view, and Archibald is looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, it sounds like he's fighting someone who's smarter than him.
Kind of
Like he
difficult
might,
to say, obviously.
yeah, because he's better at fighting, but Archibald knows what he wants for his clan and his legacy and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, he's playing the long game, it seems like. And now Archibald's on the winning side, because Charles has had to surrender. He didn't have any
course.
power in Scotland anymore. He'd lost this war.
Yeah.
The religion that Archibald believed in was safe. He had survived being harassed and hunted across the country.
That's surprising in itself.
So everything's all good forever, right?
Yeah, that's the end of the episode. There's not actually... We're going to split this in half. This is actually the end of part 3.
Part 2.
No, we're going to split it in half, so this is just the end of the story completely.
Oh, no, obviously not. Peace didn't last after Charles's surrender.
Not when there's land to be stolen.
Well, exactly. Eventually, Charles managed to rally the Scots against the English Parliament, and fighting broke out once again.
Ugh.
But Archibald didn't support this, so he's still not on Charles's side.
Yeah.
Archibald supported Cromwell, who was Charles's opposition in England.
Okay.
And Archibald actually invited Oliver Cromwell to Edinburgh, where he and other Scottish Covenanters were establishing a new parliament.
Oh.
But when Charles I lost his head,
Yep.
lots of people across Scotland lost theirs.
Oh.
So even the people who hated him, who hadn't been on his side, were appalled when King Charles I was executed.
Yep.
It seemed an unthinkable and unbearable thing that a king had been beheaded. And because of this attitude, Archibald was tarred with that brush, because he was deemed partly responsible.
Oh.
So people didn't support him and his cause like before, because they felt like this was a step too far.
Okay. Oh, and then Archibald invited Cromwell up, so they were big buds in the eyes of everyone else.
So even though Archibald didn't kill him and didn't arrange his execution, he wasn't with him.
Yep. I'm with you.
So the tide's turning. He's been on this high, he's been on the winning side, and
Yep.
he's managed to stave off all of this bloodshed and pain and loss. But now it's just public opinion that's turned on him.
Well, I can't see him getting executed, at least.
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so. I think that would be too extreme.
Well, Archibald was clever, it seems like, because he figured out a way he could kind of bring it back around while still maintaining what he believed in.
Did he do a Julius Caesar? Did he just start having big parties for everyone?
No, although that's a valid technique.
Yeah.
He was basically... He aligned himself with the idea that Charles II could come back and be king. He could be on the throne, as long as he agreed with the Covenanters' demands.
Okay.
Which we've talked about before. So he didn't support Charles I because Charles I was shitting all over the Covenant.
Because he's a dick.
But Archibald can see people aren't happy now that he's dead. So he's going, well, his son could be king, as he should be, as long as he does exactly what we tell him.
I mean, that's how everyone else ever gets power, so...
Pretty much. Oh, and it should be noted that it's at this time Montrose was executed.
I was about to ask, did Montrose come back in and like throw a turnip at him or something?
No, because he was a big supporter of Charles I. So when he was beheaded, it's around the same time Montrose was executed. And he was hung, drawn and quartered.
Oh, nasty.
Various parts of him were on display in the centre of Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. And one of his arms was removed and displayed in Dundee.
Well, that's nice.
So he got around.
Oh.
Back to Archibald, though. He's still trying to be kind of sneaky, carrying out his plan. He was basically the head of the government by this time.
Oh, yeah?
So he's negotiating with Charles II, and he actually rivals him in terms of power.
Damn.
At this moment in history. So he's in a good position to sort of negotiate and get what he wants and get people on side and all of that kind of business.
And I imagine it's a bit of a sigh of relief that Montrose is dead.
For him, probably.
Yeah.
Just this murky shadow trying to kill you at every opportunity.
I know. Just having that over and done with would be quite nice, I'm sure.
So Archibald is trying to get Charles II on side. He even tried to get the king to marry one of his daughters. So he's playing for himself too, not just religion and faith.
No, never.
If he's
never
trying
just.
to bring the crown into the Campbell line, that's for yourself.
Yeah. This would be really good for us and me.
Pretty much. But unfortunately, Archibald's luck and career went down the tubes when Charles II decided to try and win back England, which, while Charles II had been brought back to the throne in Scotland, Cromwell had effectively turned England into a republic without a king.
Yep.
And Charles trying to take it back did not go well, and he had to flee to Europe.
Ooh. So is there quite a long period without a king in England?
A period of a few years, yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly how long. It wasn't ages and ages and ages, but...
But it's a few years rather than like tens of years.
Yeah, a couple of years where there was no monarch.
Until Cromwell got too big for his britches, presumably.
We'll get there.
Yeah, okay.
In the meantime, Cromwell is sitting pretty, so Archibald had to submit to Cromwell's army because Charles had fled. Mm-hmm. And by this time, Archibald had lost everything.
Everything?
By 1652, he was completely broke.
Oh, no. You can have all the land in Scotland and be broke. Mm-hmm. Effectively.
I read that his eldest son, which was another Archibald, Jesus fucking Christ, his eldest son was so angry with him that Archibald VIII actually wanted to have Inveraray Castle defended by soldiers constantly because he was so worried his son would attack him and try to kill him. So he's not in a good place.
No.
And Archibald VIII was arrested as a debtor when he visited London in 1655.
Ooh.
That's how bad things had gotten for him.
Well, war's expensive. Mm-hmm. It always is, always has been, and still is.
And so is trying to maintain a powerful persona.
Yes, that as well.
If he's effectively the head of government and trying to rival the king.
Yep.
You know?
He's overstretched.
So a huge change in fortune.
Yeah.
And this is still Archibald VIII.
And his dad was Archibald the Grim.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're still talking about this guy.
We're an hour in and it's still him.
I realise it's been a while, but he had such an interesting time.
Yeah, I think so.
It was insane. Charles II came back to power in 1660.
1660.
Yes.
Okay.
And Archibald was arrested for high treason.
Oh my God. Montrose got his plan in the end-ish.
This happened because Archibald was now being held accountable for the death of Charles I, who was beheaded.
That seems like a stretch. It's not his fault.
Well, I think it was just his involvement. They're pushing for him to be responsible, but he was acquitted of Charles's death. But he couldn't deny that he had submitted to Cromwell just a couple years before. And that was high treason.
Oh.
So there was multiple things they tried to get him on, but they had this thing that he couldn't deny that he had done because everyone had seen him do it.
Yeah. They got him.
They got him, unfortunately, and high treason is no joke.
Mm-hmm.
So Archibald was beheaded in May 1661 in Edinburgh.
Oh, man. I thought he was doing so well. I thought he was just going to die of old age. So how old was he? 61? Must have been fairly old.
And his father died in 1638. Hang on, I'll look at my notes. I've got it somewhere. He was a decent age from what I remember.
Yeah, he must be towards his 60s.
Bear with me.
Because somebody was 42, but I can't remember when.
61, take away 7. My brain's completely mush because I'm...
54.
He was 54. Sorry, it's because I'm fully in the story. I can't switch my maths brain on. Don't keep that in. Yeah, he was 54 when he was executed.
Oh, I thought he'd be older. I kind of... For how much has happened, I assumed he'd be in his 60s or his 70s.
Nope.
Which would be quite old for the time, but still.
There is a little bit of gossip surrounding his execution.
Give me the tea.
Apparently, he was executed before his death warrant was signed.
Ooh.
So technically not legal.
That happened to one of the witches we talked about as well at some point.
Yeah, it's all a bit dodgy.
Oh.
Sounds an awful lot like the cart going before the horse, methinks.
It does indeed. I mean, especially, I did wonder when they were just going to keep trialing him until they found something he'd done.
Yeah.
He did this. Oh, well, we checked and he didn't. What about this one? Nope, sorry.
We want him to have done it, though. That's not the same.
That's not the same thing.
Now, I feel like the ultimate insult was that after Archibald's execution, Montrose's head was taken off the spike on the top of the toll booth in Edinburgh. And Archibald's was put there instead.
Ugh. It's so, every time I hear it, I just like walking down the town past the heads on spikes.
The toll booth is in the middle of Edinburgh.
Yeah, so you're just, and you would think nothing of it because they are always there and have always been there. It's grim.
So yeah, they were intricately linked until the very end.
Yep.
And everything comes back around. No one is ever safe. What do you think?
Well, that was a journey and a half. So I'm a little bit exhausted now. I'm already exhausted. So we're on to Archibald the Ninth.
Yes, we are. Yes, we're now on to Archibald Campbell, the 9th Earl of Argyll.
The 9th.
In this whirlwind of history that I'm taking you through.
It has been a whirlwind. Archibald the Ninny.
The Ninny. You don't even know him yet.
Well, it's just the 9th. It fits.
This Archibald was a royalist.
Which his dad was not.
Yes.
See? Paying attention. So I am. Is it just like rebellious kid?
It seems that way.
Especially if Archibald VIII was a Presbyterian and his dad was a Catholic.
Yeah.
They just have to have that like, no, I'm not like my dad. I'm totally different because of this one small detail.
Rebellion. Now, this Archibald was such a dedicated royalist that he actually spent time in prison over it while all the warring and conflict was happening.
It's possibly the safest place to be.
Maybe. His father, Archibald VIII, had initially tried to keep his son out of it completely. He sent Archibald IX to Europe.
Oh, yep.
So out of Scotland. But he still developed very strong opinions and loyalties while he was away from home.
Interesting.
He was very committed to the Stuart monarchy, which put him in opposition to his father. And he even wrote to lots of monarchs across Europe, promising that he was loyal and promising that he would stay loyal, even if it meant standing up to his father.
Wow.
So in a way, Archibald VIII made it harder for himself.
Yeah. As the royals across Europe went, who?
Well, he comes off a little ass-kissy, I think.
Right?
Like a bit spoiled, because his father funded his entire life.
Yeah.
He's the reason that he's in Europe in the first place, and not at war.
And he's over there like, I hate my dad, don't worry, King of Spain.
And like writing letters behind his back, telling people he would happily kill him.
Yeah.
You know, you obviously don't know everything, but just from the outside, you're just like, ooh, that's not good.
Not good at all. It seems very big of like the spotlight effect. Like, yeah, everyone will want to hear from me, but they don't give a fuck about you, mate.
Well, remember, he is a very powerful person.
I suppose so, but even still.
He's not he's not a king,
Yeah.
but he did have a lot of power and influence and could be a good way into Scotland
I guess so, yeah.
for someone who wanted to take advantage of him.
Uh-huh.
Now, I did read a theory that the Campbells actually just pretended that father and son were at such opposite ends of the political spectrum, so that, regardless of who won, the Campbells would be fine.
Oh, that is the long game, if so.
Sneaky.
Sneaky.
I kind of believe it.
I kind of believe it as well.
Clan first, before family.
Ooh.
It fits into that belief.
Yep. And then plays out as such. Mm-hmm. Because had father and son been in it together, they both would have been murdered.
Exactly. So you always have someone in the winning camp.
Well, I can see it. I can see it. It's believable.
Right? Archibald IX served in Charles II's army during the Civil War, but he was not well liked at all.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, it really... See, he comes off a bit spoiled.
Yep.
He fell out with a lot of people during his time serving in the army. Mm-hmm. He ended up in fights and disputes with other army leaders and other officers. And there were some he was nearly murdered because people were so fed up of him.
My dad could beat up you.
And he got caught grassing on people to King Charles II.
Oh, he sounds like wee shit.
He's not a savoury character.
No.
Now, remember, I said that his father had been so worried about him that he wanted Inveraray Castle defended with soldiers. He had cause to think this and cause to be worried about this, because Archibald IX raided and stole from ships that were supposed to be for his father's men. So they were carrying supplies that were for Campbell soldiers, and Archibald IX raided them and stole from them.
What is he doing?
And he also raided Campbell land. So he was robbing his own people.
Does he? Because, he's going to be in charge of all of these people at some point. Mm-hmm. Does he not think they might not be best impressed?
Right.
If he's been pillaging them?
And he's around 30 at this time. Oh. It sounds like teenage rebellion, but he's nearly 30.
It sounds very much like a snot-nosed wee shit, think he knows everything. Maybe 15 kind of thing.
But no, he's a grown man.
Oh, not good.
So it's getting an awful lot of other people involved in a dispute between a father and a son.
Yeah, dragging people in who did not ask to be there.
Yep.
Well, I'm curious what his tenure will be like.
Well, he didn't get away with all this forever, because eventually he had to surrender to Cromwell.
Oh, yes, of course.
But it seems like Archibald IX never properly turned, because he was still in contact with King Charles II. Mm-hmm. And he never really meant his surrender. He just knew he couldn't avoid it anymore.
With surrender or die, you're going to surrender.
Yeah. And a few months later, after his surrender, he announced that he fully supported the Stuarts, that he did not mean surrender. So he announced this publicly.
Backsies.
And then he was arrested for not renouncing his loyalty to the Stuarts.
Okay, yep.
As you would expect.
Naturally. But the king comes back around, so he's going to get pardoned.
You see why this is tricky to keep track of?
Yes.
Archibald IX was held prisoner in Edinburgh Castle in 1658 because he still supported the Stuarts. While he was prisoner there, he apparently suffered a pretty severe concussion.
Oh, no.
He was playing bullets, which was apparently a lot like bowling, while, being a prisoner. But here's what happened. Being played at the bullets in the castle, the lieutenant of the castle throwing the bullet, it lighted on a stone, and with such force started back on the Lord Lorne's head, that's Archibald IX, that he fell down and lay for the space of some hours dead. After that, he recovered, and his head was trepanned once or twice.
Trepanned?
Trepanning is no joke. That would be when you would have a hole drilled into your head. I think because they felt that would alleviate swelling. I think it's still done.
I think so.
Differently.
Yeah, they still cut out a part of your head if your brain is swelling.
So that's what they did to him.
Ooh. Ooh. That's a hell of a throw, that's what that is.
Yeah, and a hell of a concussion, a hell of a head injury.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. He was eventually released from prison, and by this point he returned to his duties as Earl of Argyll. I think by this point his father had been executed.
Okay, yep.
His dad was executed in 61.
Yeah.
And he got the concussion in 58.
Is he mad now, though, having sustained such a serious head injury?
Well, I mean, you can assume it would have some impact.
Yeah.
But they didn't really understand it then.
No.
There's a lot we don't understand about head injuries now.
I was just about to say.
So he's been released from prison. He has to return to be the Earl of Argyll again. But with all of the grand things that are going on, you kind of forget that these men still had responsibilities at home that they were neglecting. And it all kind of compounded on Archibald IX, because when he went back home, he had to try and deal with all the debt that his father had left.
Ah, but of course.
Remember, he was arrested as a debtor.
Yeah.
Which didn't make Archibald IX very popular.
No.
Because he's trying to sort out all this debt.
Ooh. Did he have to start selling off land or something?
Well, he spent a lot of time in Inveraray Castle around this time, and he did a lot of work in the local area. He worked on the gardens a lot, but he's basically trying to make money any way he can.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he ended up selling much of his land, but he was trying to find ways to make cash. Now the Earl of Atholl, one of them, who knows, and the Earl of Seaforth, so that's further north, our neck of the woods, were all tasked by King Charles II, who is king again, with controlling the Highlands.
Oh.
Because it was just the wild, wild west here during the 1660s, apparently. It was just mental. And a lot of this had to do with how many Catholics there were in the Highlands.
Just all the Catholics running amok.
Kinda, yeah. Well, they didn't recognise the king.
Yeah.
So that was a big factor. So Archibald has now been tasked with dealing with them.
Oh, that's so strange. So there's all this civil war happening, presumably to the south of Scotland then.
By now, civil war has kind of ended because Charles II is king again.
Yeah, so all that was happening down in the south. And while that was happening, they're all going, whew, at least we're not in the Highlands though, right? Fucking animals up there, Jesus.
God, you get posted there, you don't come back.
Yep. So I can just imagine them like, okay, you have to go and deal with him. Can we go back to civil war? I don't want to go up north amongst the savages.
It was in and around all of this happening too that Archibald was widowed and then remarried. So he has an awful lot going on.
Awful lot going on.
Now, this is confusing. Like, I feel like I don't even know how this episode is going to sound listening to it back. I feel like I've not made any sense. But I swear it's not my fault.
I'm following.
This is confusing. But it was after the Civil War and the 1660s that Charles and the royals were kind of converting to Catholicism.
Oh.
I know.
Oh. Why?
There were lots of political reasons, which I'm trying not to get into because it just muddies the water. But the fact that the royals were leaning into Catholicism and religious freedom generally didn't sit well with Archibald IX.
I'm so confused.
I know.
I know what's happening. I'm following what you're saying, but I'm so confused why you would war against the Catholics for so long, and then be like, maybe it's not so bad.
I know.
It's painful.
Archibald didn't want to compromise his beliefs, even when he was approached by the royals themselves, and it was suggested to him that he convert to Catholicism. And he took it so far that he refused to take a new oath of fealty to the king, because to him it didn't make sense with his religion to do that.
Yeah.
He was very stubborn. So he's completely changed. He was one of Charles's staunchest supporters, and now he's like, Catholics though? No.
Mate, have you been smoking the plot? Because I'm not on board.
Everyone was fed up with Archibald by 1681, and he was arrested for treason.
Oh. Maddening.
I know. This is why this episode took so long to put together.
Yeah.
Honestly. But another motive for his arrest is how powerful Archibald was.
Yes.
Being the Earl of Argyll made him one of, if not the most powerful man in Scotland. Like, he rivaled the king, and we've seen before that can't happen.
Yes. Is he not a marquis? Marcus?
Well, I think his father was made a marquess, but I feel like the title was stripped when he was executed.
Well, that's fair.
So I think it went back to being Earl, I believe. Because he was made a marquess by Charles I.
Yes.
But then was executed for committing treason against the Charleses.
Yes.
Archibald did get a trial, you'll be pleased to hear.
Oh, well.
But from everything I saw, it was not fair.
No.
And he was eventually charged with treason. But I don't think he should have. When you look at the legal process, it doesn't seem fair, the method that they used to charge him. But what you might find interesting is that I think it was Bloody Mackenzie who led Archibald's trial.
Oh, wow.
I think he was either the judge or he was one of the legal counsel.
I was thinking he tried the Covenanters.
Well, this is him.
So, here we are.
Except this Archibald wasn't a Covenanter.
No.
We'll move past it. It's fine.
Yeah, we just keep going. Keep
Don't
going.
even worry about it.
Keep going.
Don't even worry about it. In true sneaky but diplomatic fashion, Charles II tried to keep himself right down the middle when it came to this case. Because he wanted Archibald to pose less of a threat.
Yep.
He wanted him taken down a peg or two. Because he wasn't towing the line, he had too much power. But he also didn't want to look bad. Because he's obviously learnt a lot from his father's tenure as king. So he doesn't want to seem like the bad guy. Which is why Archibald went through the trial and was found guilty of treason. But when he was sentenced to death, Charles II wasn't actually pleased that was the outcome.
Oh, okay.
Because he didn't necessarily want him to be killed.
Yeah. Could he step in?
Well, he did.
Oh.
He decided that although Archibald had been sentenced to death, just process, I had nothing to do with it, it was the legal system, he ordered that the sentence shouldn't be passed down straight away and should only happen when he said so.
Okay.
So he's basically holding this sentence of death over him, and he can say when.
Because I was thinking, if Cromwell stripped the royals of their power, I presume he can't step in and be like, no, we'll not do that, we'll do this instead. And change the sentence.
It's tricky. He can't do too much.
No, but that's not changing the sentence. That's...
Justice will be delivered when I say so.
Yeah, it's different. Tricky.
And by doing this, he's making sure that Archibald IX suffers. And because he's been sentenced to death and charged with treason, all of his stuff has been taken away and granted to the king.
Oh, okay, yes.
With me?
Yep.
So, professional. So Archibald does not trust Charles anymore. Their relationship is completely over, dead. There is no good blood between them anymore. Archibald's loyalty has been tested so hard that it's now broken.
Yes.
Charles and his camp have made Archibald their enemy, which, unless you are sure you're going to win, is never a smart idea.
Nope.
So Archibald decided that he was going to perform a jailbreak.
Interesting.
Before they could kill him.
I mean, what other choice does he have?
None.
So... I would try and get away.
Oh yeah? Would you escape?
I would escape. Well, I probably wouldn't escape, but I would try and escape.
Do you want to hear how he did it?
Yes.
Archibald was being held in Edinburgh Castle. Again. A very grand prison. And while he was there, he was visited by his heartbroken stepdaughter, who was called Sophia Lindsay. Because remember, he had remarried. He had a second wife. Sophia was in absolute pieces about the situation her stepfather was in. She was an absolute mess. She couldn't bear to go visit him alone. And it also wasn't safe or proper for a lady to travel alone, especially to a prison.
Yep, that's fair.
So she brought her page with her to go and visit her stepfather. He looked a bit strange, the page, when the two of them arrived to see Archibald. He had really weird hair, and he was wrapped in bandages as if he'd been really badly hurt, but they were allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
Some time passed, they had their visit, and eventually Sophia emerged in floods of tears, along with her trusty page. Now, she was so heartbroken by her visit that she had to be ushered by her page from the prison, bodily helped along. She climbed into her coach, the page stepped up onto the back, and then they left. Except it wasn't the page on the back of the coach, wearing the strange hair and the weird bandages.
I am shocked.
It was Archibald.
Oh my god.
Because the page had been wearing a disguise when he went with Sophia into the prison.
Very nice.
Obviously.
I mean, what's in it for the page?
Oh, I have no idea how he made it out of the castle. No one has accounted for that.
Yeah.
I imagine he just snuck out again.
I guess so.
Yeah, nothing is said about how he got out.
Yeah, because he couldn't just be like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. And they just let him go. Because they're like, well, how did you get there? That's a crime. We're going to arrest you and put you in prison.
I don't know. The page obviously wasn't important enough to record because there's nothing about it.
Mental.
Archibald jumped off the coach when they were in Edinburgh itself, and he hid in George Pringle's house, who was actually the mastermind behind the jailbreak. Archibald then travelled down to Northumberland and then on to London as Mr. Hope.
Mr. Hope, very nice. Just had the thought maybe the page got somebody else to be a page and spring him out.
But where does it end?
And it just keeps going. Just keeps on going.
Where does it end? Archibald travelled around a fair bit. He never stayed in one place too long.
Smart.
So he wouldn't get caught. And what's surprising is that even with all of the precautions he was taking, King Charles II knew exactly where he was most of the time.
Whoa.
But he just left him to it.
Crazy.
Because he didn't want to look bad rearresting him.
Uh-huh.
And if he rearrested him, he would have to kill him.
Yeah, which he didn't want to do.
No. So he just left him.
Just left him to it?
We don't know where he is.
Yeah.
Can't do anything about it.
That's mad. He did a far better jailbreak than Deacon Brodie.
Yes, he did.
All things considered.
Because he actually played it cool.
Yeah.
Deacon Brodie.
Deacon Brodie. More like Dick and Brodie.
Good one.
Thank you.
Unfortunately for Charles II, just letting Archibald do his thing may have been a seriously bad call.
Yeah.
Because while Charles was happy to just live and let live, Archibald wasn't. He became embroiled in something called the Rye House plot.
Uh-oh.
Which was a plot to assassinate Charles and his brother James.
Ooh. Well, you can't blame him.
No, he's pretty pissed by this point.
Yep.
His entire belief system has been shattered and reversed.
Yeah. It seems he's now going to go down the road that Montrose was down, where he's just, like, obsessed with blood revenge.
You see, it's all flippy-floppy, wishy-washy, one way then the other. Now, lots of people were unhappy at this time at how chummy Charles was with other Catholic monarchs.
Yep.
Like I was saying, there was this shift happening where the royals were converting to Catholicism, and a lot of people didn't like that, Archibald included. But a lot of the people he was chummy with who were Catholics were Charles's relatives.
Ah, okay.
And his brother James had officially converted to Catholicism. Word had gotten round, and no laws were in place to stop him from inheriting the throne and becoming a Catholic monarch. Which, you know, would be the worst thing in the world.
I can't think of anything worse that could happen in this story than that.
But that was a big problem. There was nothing in place to stop that from happening.
Yes.
And a lot of people were very worried it would happen.
Over his dead body will I let that happen? Don't you mean my dead body? Oh no, I don't want to die. I'm going to let my men die for me.
So Archibald is taking steps to try and stop this from happening. He's going to kill Charles and James. And the only reason this plan didn't work was by complete chance.
Ooh.
By rights, Charles and James should have died in 1683.
Damn.
With the Rye House plot.
So what was the plot?
Well, Charles and James were supposed to go to Newmarket, which is a small town near Cambridge in England. And they were going there to enjoy the horse races. Pair of brothers, having a good time.
Fair enough.
Would you do that with Struan?
Probably not.
No, not horse races.
No horse races, no.
What about corgi races?
Oh, hell yeah. That would be fully... Go to the dog track, but it's corgis.
Well, there was a corgi race at Musselburgh races a couple of weeks ago.
Was there?
Yeah, it's a thing. They have a corgi race.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'll set you up, so now you have to go.
Well, now I have to go, obviously.
These brothers were all set to go and do that, go to the horse races, and that's where the assassinations were going to happen. The plan was that the assassins would ambush the brothers as they passed Rye House on their way home from the races.
Okay.
Rye House plot. And apparently there were even multiple plans to ensure that it happened in case one of them failed. So they knew the route, they knew the journey they would have to take to return home. They had things in place. Okay, if we don't get them here, we'll get them here. And if we don't get them here, this is what we'll do.
Is this going to be another Looney Tunes moment where he's like, ooh, a penny, and bends over and then an arrow flies over his head?
No, it's actually a legitimate, could not have foreseen this happening. The reason it failed.
Okay.
You have no idea how badly I want to end the episode here, so you have to wait again.
Oh, can't do it to me twice.
It couldn't happen twice. So they were all set to go. They had everything in place. But what the assassins and Archibald hadn't planned on was Newmarket, the town, nearly burning entirely to the ground.
Well... That's an unforeseen circumstance and a half.
There was a huge fire and it nearly destroyed the entire town.
Oh no.
So the races were cancelled. And because the king and his brother never came to Newmarket in the first place, the plan was never attempted.
Well,
so not as Looney Tunes as the ones before.
I didn't see it coming though.
Neither did they.
Neither did they. Well...
Yeah, a fire started just by chance and it raged through Newmarket.
So the races didn't happen?
Nope, the races didn't happen at all, so the king and his brother never went.
Well, that's unexpected. Mm-hmm. So do they come up with another plot? Or are they just, well, they're obviously a bit gutted because they had their rock-solid plan. They didn't just tell somebody who grass on them like Montrose did.
Right. Well, actually... the plot was discovered.
Oh.
After the fact. So they're not gutted, they're completely shitting their pants.
They're about to be gutted.
Well, the conspirators were all arrested.
Yep.
Because they were discovered. And when the documents concerning the plot were discovered, don't know why they exist, letters were found that were believed to have been written by Archibald.
Uh-huh.
But they were all in code, so they couldn't be sure at first.
Okay.
They suspected that they recognised the writing and all of that stuff. They had a feeling, but they couldn't prove it 100%. Until they brought Archibald's wife down to London.
Oh.
They made her read the letter to tell them if it was her husband.
Ooh. Well, does she do the wifely duty and lie and say it wasn't his? Or does she save her bacon and say it was?
Well, I think she handled it really well.
Yeah?
Because she managed to protect herself and Archibald to a degree.
Poked her own eyes out?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not the answer. No, I think she did as much as she could have done in the circumstances. She read the letter and she admitted that it was her husband's handwriting.
Yes.
He did write the letters.
Did she give him a fake code?
Well, she had the only key to the code. So she had the only way of deciphering what he had written. And she told everyone that she had burned it. So there was no way for them to work out what he had said. So if you can't read this letter, you don't know that it's anything bad.
Yep.
But she's admitted that he did write it, so she hasn't lied.
No.
But she's not telling them what the letter says either.
Interesting.
I felt like that was very well handled.
Very nicely done. Because if it's handled wrong, they both die. Mm-hmm. And if it's handled well, one of them dies.
But she's also not betraying her husband.
Yeah, so to handle it so well that potentially nobody dies, or is accused or whatever. Very nice, very nice.
I thought it was very smart.
Yeah, that's fair play.
I commend her for her effort. But unfortunately, Archibald's private secretary, a man called William Spence, ruined everything.
Ooh.
Along with two other guys. They decoded it. So they managed to work out the code without the key. So we're able to say everything that was in the letter, regardless of what Archibald's wife had said.
Well.
And the letter was super damning.
Oh no.
It was basically an I did it in fewer words. It didn't look good for him. He was complaining in this letter that he wasn't being given enough money. And he wasn't given enough money or men to stage the rebellion that they had planned for Scotland.
Okay.
So, super bad. They were giving him £10,000 with 600 or 700 horse, but he wanted £30,000 and 1,000 English horse.
Huh. Interesting.
So he's outlined their numbers, he's complaining, which shows that he's completely involved and he's going to benefit, and he's outlined the rebellion that they have planned after killing the king.
Oh, captured by his own greed.
And he also detailed all of the men that King Charles would be able to call on across Scotland in the event of a rebellion.
Oh no.
So he had estimated numbers, locations, and like men's loyalty to King Charles. So they knew what they were up against.
Oh. Well, that's pretty damning, isn't it?
It's not good.
I wonder what was in it for the secretary.
Probably his life.
Well, that's true. Eh?
So that he's not part of the plot,
Yeah.
you would assume.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's only a secretary.
Yep.
You know, he won't have any power of his own to fall back on, so...
What does he care?
Well, he has to do what's right for him.
Yeah.
Archibald is on the run at this point. It's just probably the only smart move he's made
Yep.
up until now. No one was really sure where he was, although it seems like he was in the Netherlands at this time. He was safe there under King William and Queen Mary,
Okay.
who were... Mary was James VI's daughter,
Yes.
who we've talked about before. But when Charles II died in 1685 anyway,
Uh-huh.
Archibald rose up to ensure that James VII wouldn't become king.
Bold.
That was Charles's brother, who
Yep.
he had intended to murder.
Yep.
So he's come back to be like, fuck no, can't have a Catholic king. That's not happening, apparently.
Oh, yes, because he converted to Catholicism.
Is this whole thing?
Yes.
Is this whole mess?
Yep.
Monarchy is a mess.
Yep.
Archibald joined a movement that pushed for James, the Duke of Monmouth, to become king. They felt that he was a good substitute. He was James VII's half-brother, but he was illegitimate. And he was older, but he couldn't inherit the throne because he was illegitimate.
Okay, so what do we need? Is he qualified? No. Is he Catholic? No. Done. He's got the job.
And he has a penis.
Oh, and yep. Does he have a penis? Yes. Boom. Easy.
That's not a good screening system.
I think that's all they would have looked for.
The plan was for Archibald to be part of the Scottish Rebellion, which he had completely outlined in his letters that were discovered.
Yep.
And the idea was that this would force the English soldiers to travel north. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the Monmouth Rebellion would happen in England, but there would be no soldiers there to fight him off.
That's good. That's a good plan.
That was the plan. Archibald didn't necessarily trust Monmouth, but they had to work together for them to pull this off.
Yeah.
Archibald sailed back to Scotland, high on the thrill of rebellion, expecting it all to be glorious and victorious and all of that good stuff. But he didn't get the reception that he expected.
Charging him like, I'm back, everybody.
We don't care.
Crickets.
Not everyone was keen on joining him and his cause, which surprised him. He thought people would be falling over themselves to stop a Catholic king taking the throne.
It's the problem he's had from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He's just totally convinced he's right and he's amazing and everyone will be with him. And is surprised when that's not the case.
Yeah, he was surprised he didn't have the outpouring of support when he touched back on Scottish soil.
Yeah.
Those who did join him couldn't really do what they needed to for this to work because he had no experience leading men in war.
Oh.
And he was always falling out with the other leaders of this rebellion. Remember, he had that track record from before. He's a bad person to get along with. This was still an issue.
Still the case.
And it's causing him problems again.
Yeah. It's all come back to bite him in the ass.
Mm-hmm. And it turned out that he had been completely right not to trust Monmouth. Because even though he'd promised to mount his attack in England no more than 6 days after Archibald landed in Scotland to back him up, he didn't do it until nearly a month after Archibald got back from the Netherlands.
That's a long time. I'm surprised he did it at all by that point.
That's a long time to be mounting a rebellion on your own with no backup.
Yeah. And trying to drum up support when nobody cares.
Yep.
And he's presumably still broke, so it's not like he can pay them.
Well, I mean, he's not been able to go home. He's been on the run.
Yeah.
He's not sitting too pretty. Archibald and his forces sailed to Orkney, and they landed there first, taking hostages. And then they sailed down the west coast and landed at Campbelltown. 3 guesses who has all the power in that neighbourhood.
Campbells.
Yes.
Ah.
This was where Archibald announced that all he really wanted was his land and property back, because they had stripped it all from him while he was on the run. He hadn't been able to come home. So he's trying to tell them that, oh no, I don't care about anything else. I just want what's mine back. So you should support me, even though there's much bigger things at play.
So who's been in power in his absence? His son?
We will get to that.
Okay.
We will get to that. Point is, he hasn't been.
Yes.
But he's trying to paint it as a local issue when it's not.
Yes.
The powers that be had only managed to strip him of his land, power, everything, because they found a stash of hidden documents.
Oh, shit.
And this stash was basically a collection of all the deeds and family documents that you needed to own land and property. They couldn't take everything without these documents because they couldn't take what they technically didn't have.
Oh, that's what I was wondering in the last episode.
Yes.
About how do you take lands? Because is there a deed or something?
Well, this is how they did it then.
Yeah.
I don't know what the laws and things were when we were talking about it before.
No, but that's interesting though.
So he hasn't had access to all of this for a long time, and they've done it completely legally. He made this big announcement in Campbelltown, and his people didn't receive him well.
Why would they care?
The powers that be have had control of his land and his tenants, and their rents had been quadrupled between 1665 and 1685.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeesh.
Because the family's been in debt, there's been lots of issues, lots of conflict, lots of things having to be rebuilt and redone.
We have to band together because I've spent all of our money.
Mm-hmm. So they didn't care that he came back, and they didn't receive him well.
No.
And you can't blame them.
No, not even a little bit.
Archibald tried to lead his rebellion, but his forces never exceeded 2,500 men.
I'm surprised it was that many.
Mm-hmm. And they suffered multiple defeats, which then led to desertions, which depleted their forces even further.
Yeah.
So at their height, that's how many he had, but it didn't last.
Well, as you've been promised, we'll go round and we'll get more men, and you go round and you don't get more men. You'd start to get a bit worried.
Yeah. He had landed in Campbelltown in May, and by mid-June, he had no one left.
Oh, no.
Everyone had deserted. No one was respecting his orders, even the ones who stayed the longest. It was an absolute shambles.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Now, Archibald claims that at this point, the other leaders had abandoned him to just see through this rebellion alone. But alternate claims from the time suggest that he was told by them to travel north to safety. They said, you need to get out here, this isn't working. They didn't abandon him, they tried to help him because this was a lost cause. And he just wasn't for it. He wasn't going to give it up.
I believe that more. That he would be like, no, it was everyone else's fault. It's not my fault, obviously.
Oh, he has no experience.
Yeah. It's not good.
So they tried to convince him and they tried to help him, and he just wouldn't listen. So he's not listening to his allies. He's not listening to his people.
What's he going to do?
Ugh. He tried to keep travelling south to sort of join the Monmouth Rebellion in disguise.
Oh, yeah.
But was quickly discovered, because his disguise was terrible, and he was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
When he was arrested, the other leaders who had been part of this rebellion told their remaining men to go home and save themselves so they wouldn't be taken as part of this. And this was really the end of the rebellion, because almost all the other leaders were taken prisoner too, just like Archibald. Yep. But they had tried to save their men beforehand, which I admire more than the ones we talked about before.
Absolutely.
And within just a couple of weeks of all this, Archibald was executed.
A waste.
Just like his dad.
Just like his dad. But, oh.
And it was in exactly the same way, using the same equipment.
Ooh. Did they take his dad's head off the pike and put his head on?
I think it'd been too long
Okay.
for that. Yeah, he was executed.
Wow.
Apparently, he accepted his fate. He stayed in good humour, even like on the morning of his execution. People remarked on it. And they had to wake him up the morning of because he was sleeping so deeply.
Wow.
But some people think this could have been down to his concussion that he received. That it had an impact on his brain. And that's why he slept so well. But apparently the guy who had to wake him up was completely overcome with remorse. He completely broke down. He felt awful that he had to wake this man up.
Yeah.
He was sleeping so peacefully so that he could be executed.
I feel for that guy. That's a tough job.
Yep. Archibald even made puns until the very end.
Man after my own heart.
He was beheaded by the Maiden, which was a Scottish style of guillotine. And before he was executed, he said that this was the sweetest maiden he had ever kissed.
Whew. Whew. I wonder if he was able to make so much peace with it because, like, he tried. He tried, he escaped, he tried again, tried some more, and it just didn't work. So he was like, you know what? I'm out.
Well, it seems like he was fully in the belief that he was right until the end.
Ooh. Is that an Iron Maiden?
No, the Iron Maiden's like that coffin-looking thing. The Maiden's a guillotine.
Yes.
We've seen it, actually. There's a Maiden at one of the museums, the National Museum in Edinburgh, I think. We've seen it.
Well, thus ends Archibald the 8th. Ninth.
I don't blame you for not remembering, though.
Yeah.
He was survived by his second wife. Remember, he had remarried. Lady Anne Mackenzie. And the 7 children he had with his first wife.
It's a lot of children.
It's a lot of kids. But all the Campbells have lots of kids. I don't know when he had the time.
No.
Now, Lady Anne Mackenzie was actually a staunch Jacobite in opposition to her husband.
Because the Jacobites were Catholic.
Yes, and they supported the Stuart monarchy.
Yes.
Archibald completely turned his back on Charles II.
Yes.
And wanted revenge and tried to kill him. But Lady Anne Mackenzie, his wife, supported the Stuarts. And they reckon that's why she wasn't also executed.
Got you.
And she's the one who read the letters and confirmed that it was yada yada. She was born at Bran Castle.
Oh, cool.
And her father was Colin Mackenzie, the first Earl of Seaforth.
Oh.
Now, he knew Facher McRae from our Eilean Donnan episode.
That's smart.
They were friendly. King Charles II was godfather to one of her sons with her first husband.
Very cool.
So they were firmly on the side of the Stuarts.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it didn't really serve her and her first husband because they suffered a lot financially and she had to sell her jewels for the cause. They had no money. And she was given a pension by Charles.
That's all right.
As a personal thank you, a personal favour. Although it took a while for her to get it and she struggled until she married Archibald financially. But his wealth helped with all of her debt. Even though things got a bit muddy when he then changed his mind.
Yep.
Her daughter helps bring Archibald from prison.
Yeah, okay, yes.
And, disgustingly, one of Archibald's sons with his first wife married Sophia.
Ugh. So he married his stepsister?
Yes.
Blech.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of Archibald's sons with his first wife inherited the title of 10th Earl of Argyll.
Sons with his first wife. Yep, that makes sense.
He is also called Archibald.
Oh, well, that's good. We haven't had a Colin in a while. What's happened to Colin?
He didn't just get the earldom by right of being a son, though. He had to fight to get his family's land and property back.
Oh, yes.
Because remember you asked who was Earl, who was taking things. That's why I wanted to wait. Archibald IX had everything taken away. So technically, none of the land and property belonged to the Campbells anymore.
It belonged to the king.
Yes, and the Campbells didn't have the earldom anymore. So Archibald X tried really hard to get James VII to like him. Really, really tried.
Really kissing ass.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
No?
No, it didn't work. So, Archibald X went to King William of Orange and his wife Queen Mary instead.
Oh.
In the Netherlands. As we know, William and Mary took the British throne in 1688 after the Glorious Revolution in 1619, blah, blah, blah. They were the ones who gave Archibald X all his stuff back.
Well. Oh, well, that would have helped if Archibald X's father had spent time in the Netherlands with them. They've been, apart from the last two, they've been good at picking sides. Overall. Like, they've done quite well out of that.
Well, now Archibald X has everything back.
Yeah.
And he was a huge supporter of William and Mary. He effectively became William's man in Scotland.
Damn.
He was a major supporter. He was Colonel-in-Chief of the Earl of Argyle's Regiment of Foot. That was his military title.
Colonel-in-Chief.
So it wasn't just lip service. He was serving them and supporting them.
Lip service?
Oh, he wasn't just saying it.
Oh, right, yeah.
He wasn't just saying the right things. He was doing the things that a genuine supporter would do.
Yeah. Not ass-kissing lip service.
No. And it might sound just like a bit of guff calling him Colonel-in-Chief of the Earl of Argyle's Regiment of Foot. But this was the regiment that took part in the Glencoe massacre in 1692.
Ooh.
We've gotten to that part of history.
It's been coming.
Archibald supports William and Mary. William and Mary won oaths of allegiance from the clan chiefs in the north. One of the MacDonald chiefs was late. He missed the deadline of giving his allegiance to William and Mary. The Campbells were ordered to cull the MacDonalds living in Glencoe to send a message as to what happens if you don't support William and Mary.
Oh.
History is made. We've talked about it before. We have a whole episode about it. And I think it's fair to say that the Campbells' reputation never really recovered. It's a story that's morphed and changed over time, so the facts have kind of been lost. But their reputation has definitely been tarnished since then.
It's, again, I'm going to say it's funny. It's not funny, but it's funny that of all the massacres they've been part of over the years, some even super similar to this, but this one has been a step too far.
I think there's more of an emotional attachment, and the imagery associated with this one is far more dramatic.
Yeah.
I think because it's in Glencoe and like it's a very, I say cinematic, but I don't mean it in a good way. It is a good story.
Yes.
In that it has a good narrative.
It's very evocative.
Yes, not that it's a good story.
No.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not making sense.
No, I know what you mean. Maybe the times had changed as well, because we're that little bit later. Maybe like there was more newspapers and stuff, that could pick it up.
Word definitely got around about it, and I think that's part of the reason why the Campbell reputation never really came back after that.
Yeah.
It's more of a permanent stain, whereas you have the Dunoon massacre that I had never heard of before.
No. Hadn't heard of that massacre, or the burning, or the drowning, or the Red River.
The Red Ford.
Red Ford. But you get to Glencoe and...
Most people have heard of it.
Yeah, I think so. It's very commonly taught in schools as far as I'm aware. It makes you just sad to hear about.
Yeah, and I think that's why it lingers. It's far more emotional. There's something about it. But that's where we're going to leave things.
Oh, shit.
Next episode, we are going to get into the first Jacobite Rising.
Oh.
And more stories into the 1900s and modern day about the Campbell family.
So there's that bit I accidentally teased in the first part where I saw a headline about a scandal.
Yes. We're talking about that next time.
Interesting. Do we have spooks next time?
We do. We have spooks at the end of next episode.
Interesting.
As per usual.
As per your standard fare. Well, I really have to pee, so I'm going to end it there.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for being here.
This was a confusing episode, I feel like. I'm hoping that it edits okay.
I think so. I've followed, so that's usually a good sign. If a simpleton like me can manage, you amazing listeners at home will
You're
manage.
not a simpleton.
Check out merch at generallyspooky.com. Come hang out on Patreon. We're going to record our Blether next, which goes up every week, where we chat and debrief the episodes.
Yep, and we answer questions from you guys.
Yep, and you can subscribe to us. You can leave a review on your podcast player.
You can follow us on Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram as a no-cost way to support the podcast. And we'll see you for part 3 next week.
Yes, we will love you and leave you.
Bye.
Bye.